I'm Ross Atkin, designer and engineer based in London, and I work mainly on projects trying to improve accessibility and make technology easier to use for disabled people.
Which I love, by the way. It's awesome. So I know you from the Big Life Fix documentary, where you were one of the awesome inventors, and I have to say yours made me laugh more than anything. Yours and Ryan's. You like the Chuckle Brothers. It was brilliant.
Yeah, it was really. I mean, Ryan's such an amazingly nice guy, and it was a really amazing opportunity. I didn't really know him very well before we started making the program, and so it was a really amazing opportunity to get to know him through working on that project in Stay Little, and also all the amazing people in Stay Little. It was a really really lovely experience. That.
Is that your first time doing anything sort of on TV or anything?
Basically, yeah.
What was it like having your every move filmed when you were trying to come up with an idea? A bit high pressure, surely.
Yeah, although, to tell you the truth, I mean, this sounds really weird because they're really invasive, right? But I found that it was relatively easy to forget that they were there, especially when you are under pressure and you're really trying to get something done. You really focus on what you're trying to get done, particularly when you're trying to get something done, and you haven't really got enough time. You really end up just focusing on that, and it's quite easy to forget that there are these people around you kind of filming it. And then you watch it back and you're like, oh yeah, they were there.
That's so true, actually. I wasn't stressed, but I was just nervous about what Hyann was going to come up with, I think, more than anything. It's a lot of pressure within a period of time to actually come up with a solution, isn't it, really? Sort of, within the constraints of a documentary, you've got sort of a period of filming time to come up with something.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was, for the TV people, they were like, well, okay, we've done all the establishing bits of the story. Now it's time to do the bit where you hand over the thing and everyone cries and it's amazing. And they were like, well, obviously we'll just go straight to that, because they were like, from their point of view of making the TV program, that's how it was going to work. But then we were sort of like, hang on, we have to develop this whole new piece of technology now, and that takes ages. And they're like, well, that's not very interesting telly anyway. So just kind of do it as quickly as possible, because we're going to book in the day when Simon Roof's going to turn up, and you're going to have to hand it over. So you better get it done.
There's a lot of pressure. I felt that for Hyann, bless her. I think, she sort of, it was almost like I saw her maybe a couple of weeks earlier and she had loads of ideas, and then suddenly it was like she was going to come and present the idea, and I just thought, that's scary for anyone, but on TV it's even scarier.
Yeah, well, and also because, from the TV program, that surprise for you guys, the contributors, was very important for the program. We weren't really able to test stuff. You know this. You're a designer, right? You test prototypes to make sure that you're going down the right.
Ideally, yeah.
But on the Big Life Fix, we're not really able to do that very much, because that would sort of spoil the surprise. So we end up having to do what I always tell designers not to do, which is make assumptions about, that things are going to work and that they're going to work for people. And I feel like we've been more lucky than we deserve to be, actually, so far, because most of the time those assumptions have turned out to be correct. But there's no reason why they should be, actually.
It's quite funny because you can see on all your faces that you were not expecting it to work, I think, at various points. You're as surprised as we are.
Yeah, well, the natural state for any bit of technology is to be not working.
Yeah.
It's only through, things that make it to production. They've had, thousands and thousands of hours of people, working incredibly hard to, overcome their natural state of not working and moving them into a state of working. And, when it's just you building something in not very long, you don't really have time to do that, or resources. So it's quite, I don't think we're unreasonable to be very concerned about things not working.
I think also when you're working with something like internet, which is notoriously sketchy in a dodgy area, I think, it's a miracle. So well done.
Thank you. It was such a lovely project to be involved in, and it was such a nice place to be hanging out.
Do you ever hear from them? Do they send you emails and things?
Occasionally, not very much. They've, in a way, they don't need the system anymore, because one of the mobile phone providers went in and put a proper mast in. and they all switched over to that.
Was that after the show?
Yeah, about 6 months later. And so they now have decent mobile phone signal and data, so they don't need our system anymore. They don't need, it doesn't,
maybe the documentary drew attention to it and they got it because of that.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that we helped a bit. I mean, I think it's also like it's quite interesting. This whole idea of like mesh networking that we were looking into. There's some interesting stuff going on in Puerto Rico at the moment because obviously they lost a lot of their infrastructure, and so there are some people kind of exploring similar ideas there. And then also, I think with the stuff that's going on in America around net neutrality, and this idea that people will need to be able to create to access the internet without having to go through a commercial internet service provider, then I think this kind of community-run internet idea, I think in countries that have the internet, I think is going to become more important. So yeah, like intellectually, it was quite an interesting project, and it was like outside of what I knew about, which for me was very interesting.
I think all of the projects in some way were sort of experiments that could be taken further in the communities or the areas that, it was almost just the start of so many different things. When you create something for one person or one community, it's just the beginning, isn't it, almost? It's kind of, the potential is endless.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's an interesting tension in the program, because I think the strength of it really is that it is a thing for one person. I mean, I spend the rest of my time working on products that are going to be produced in varying quantities, but they're for more than one person. And you have to, when you're doing that, you're designing for a segment, and again, you're having to kind of make assumptions and things about who's representative of that segment and who isn't, and what bits of what they've said are representative and stuff. But when you're designing for one person, it's much, much, much clearer. It's like, they either like it or they don't like it. And I think that's a very powerful way of telling the story of design, I guess. And I think it allows the viewer to understand what design is a lot more than when the user isn't embodied in an individual, I guess. And so I think it's a great strength of the program. I also think it's an amazing opportunity that the program affords, because in our careers we're never able to do that otherwise. And so I'm kind of I think that's the most important thing. And I feel like anything that happens after that, where the thing is useful to more than one person, is kind of is a bonus, right? And I guess I don't think we should ever like think, oh well, this thing wouldn't be the best thing for this individual, but it might be better for the community as a whole, because that's fundamentally not how we should be doing the work in the program. But then, like Winnie the Pooh, right? That was written for one kid.
Yeah, exactly.
But it turned out that lots of other kids also liked it.
That's
so,
really nice
like, design for one person doesn't mean that you make something that isn't like more widely applicable, I guess.
And it's quite an unusual and special thing as a human being to have something created specifically for you. It doesn't happen nowadays. You have to pay a lot of money, be a millionaire or something to kind of get treatment like that. So, to be someone who has that opportunity is incredible. And I think, the fact that it then can potentially roll out to other people is an exciting bonus. But you're right, it so rarely happens that you solve problems with just one person, and you can be more kind of intricate about the solution, I think, something that is suitable for that person to achieve.
Yeah, exactly. It's the whole thing is much more human, and I think that's really lovely.
Yeah, I think the thing that I found about the process was the kind of the human element, the fact that Hyann is an incredibly bright woman, but she had that sort of human-centered design approach that actually she got to know me, and it was the same with all of you guys. You could tell you sort of immersed yourself in the situation, but also got to know the people that you were solving the problems for, and that's really important. You sometimes wouldn't get that as a designer, to actually meet all the people that you're designing for. So very rarely happens.
Yeah, well, I mean, you never meet all of them. You try and meet people that you think represent them, I guess, and you work really hard to do that. To work out who you should be talking to and recruiting them and everything. But you never get to meet everyone.
It will always be the most vocal and probably the most opinionated and the most challenging people that you'll meet, because they're the people that will maybe get put forward, perhaps?
You mean in terms of doing design research?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I feel like you work hard to kind of try and avoid falling down those kind of holes, I guess. But I mean, to me, I think this is a very interesting question about when you are designing for a lot of people. How do you find people that are representative and who has a voice? I guess I think that's a very interesting question, particularly when you're working on stuff to do with, like, sometimes I do, work on stuff that's got to do with like government regulation or policy for like TfL or something. And so that kind of idea of like who has a voice in one of those kind of situations, I think is quite an important question, and it's one that I don't think is that well I don't think we've really got a good handle on it, actually.
What, out of all the projects you've worked on in your time as a designer, what do you feel proudest of?
Nothing yet. Like, there are projects that I'm very proud of. I think they're really good ideas, and I think that they could be impactful. But I don't feel that I've worked on a project that's had the kind of impact that I want the projects to have yet. And I think that, it may be that the projects that I have already done will go on to have that impact, but it takes a long time to do that. Particularly, a lot of the stuff I do is involved in infrastructure, and that whole world moves extremely slowly. So the thing that I feel like is looking the most kind of probable at the moment is something I designed back in 2011. That's a way for making slight changes to the way that the barriers and signs are set up around roadworks in order to make them much easier for blind and partially sighted people to deal with.
Wow.
And it's kind of I was very proud of the process that I went through to design it, because I think I did some really good research with blind and partially sighted people, but also with the people that do roadworks, in order to sort of understand the whole context that this little problem lives in. And I think I was able to design something that made quite a big difference to the blind and partially sighted people without making the lives of the roadworks people a lot more difficult, or the whole thing a lot more expensive. And then now that thing is being produced by a company that makes roadworks equipment, and it's being used by a load of utilities, and people are writing nice things about it and stuff. So I feel like it's moving on its way towards getting implemented properly. But ultimately, it's only really going to have an impact when, like, a blind or partially sighted person steps out of their house and comes to the roadworks and has a reasonable chance of encountering the system. Well, ideally that they'd always encounter the system, and then it would be really, really helpful. But that's a long road, and it's probably going to take 15 years to get there.
You touched on something really interesting there, which I think is the biggest challenge. It's kind of solving problems for people with disabilities, with conditions, but also making it so that it's a no-brainer for, the companies that are dealing with this every day, or with institutions, or with the government, to actually implement these things without it being too costly and without it actually causing problems. Because I think it's great having ideas, and it's great coming up with ideas that help people, but actually if no one sees the benefit for themselves as kind of a governmental institution, or as a process, that actually it won't get used, it'll get left by the wayside, and it won't get supported.
No, exactly. I mean, the idea isn't the valuable bit, it's the impact in the world, and until you're actually having the impact in the world, the idea isn't very valuable, I think. I think in a way that's a problem with the way that we talk about technology, is that we're very, very focused on novelty, and we're not necessarily that focused on impact.
That's a real bugbear of mine, I have to say. Coming from a sort of a design agency background, it was always very much, we want a chatbot. Why do you want a chatbot? What actually is it going to solve? What's it going to do for the user? How is it going to actually impact the people that work in the company that the chatbot's going to be replacing? It's all those questions that suddenly become really difficult to answer, and a lot of people kind of see the fads and see the exciting tech, and they want to kind of jump on the bandwagon, and it's actually for the wrong reasons a lot of the time.
Absolutely, but in a way that's why this kind of process of engaging with people can be so valuable, because it's a really good way of filtering out the noise.
Yeah.
Like, if you've actually, like, if something's actually offering value to actual people, and you've met them and you've seen it, then it's much easier to believe that it's going to go on to have impact as it's scaled up.
Are you able to tell me what you're working on at the minute, or anything you've worked on recently?
Yeah. What are we doing? So we just finished an app to help older people improve their balance, which is for Stana, that make the stair lift. We we're still working on the roadworks thing, adding features and trying to make it kind of even more useful for the roadworks people doing the roadworks, I guess, in the utility, because we know that that's the way that we're going to get it implemented, I guess. We are working with a company that makes special needs toys on this kind of system for controlling sensory rooms with iPads, which is really, really lovely project. And again, we keep adding these like really nice little features to it, and kind of I really like that project. And that's, again, I feel like we're not, there are kind of just over 100 sensory rooms now which have this stuff installed in it. So it's not like, it's not changing the world, right? Each of those rooms is probably used by 50 people, and it's like, I think we've made something really nice. So I think that's it's a small impact, but we're definitely having an impact, and we're having an impact already. And so I like that project a lot. And then what am I doing? Oh yeah, I'm about to start working on some actual bits of physical roadworks equipment, but again, all mainly focused on accessibility. But I can't really tell you exactly what bits of equipment they are. But that'll be quite interesting, because I haven't done a bit of kind of straight up non-digital product design for a little while. So, I think that's going to be quite fun. And then I'm also working on a educational robot kind of project. And so I've got a new product coming out hopefully in the spring. And so I'm working on that. I'm really enjoying that, actually.
That sounds really fun. Is there a challenge that in kind of the world that you would love to be able to solve, or a problem that you would love to be able to solve that you haven't been able to crack yet, or you haven't had the opportunity to crack?
No, I don't think. I mean, I just think it's about picking off the little problems one at a time. I don't, I think it's the probability of you as an individual making a big impact on, a massive problem like climate change or whatever, nuclear disarmament or something, is really, really, really low. But there are so many problems that if you pick them off individually, you can make a big impact on. Like the roadworks thing with blind and partially sighted people is a great example, I think. Like, it seems like quite a weird niche marginal kind of thing, but actually if you look at how blind and partially sighted people navigate, and you look at what causes them problems, it's uncertainty, changes, unpredictability in the environment, and roadworks are the biggest source of that unpredictability. And so if you deal with that and you make some impact on that problem and you chip away at it, then you potentially improve the mobility, make it much easier for lots and lots of people to move around. Maybe only like marginally, but it's potentially a lot of people. And so I think, like, in a way, again, that's the strength of this kind of person-centered like design research, right? Is that you really get to the essence of what the problem actually is. And it isn't necessarily what you thought it was when you didn't really know anything about the about the field. And so I feel like the best problems that you can solve are the ones that you don't even know about.